Right then, news has seemingly started breaking that Manchester United are looking to switch to a 4-3-3 formation. And I actually spoke about this with Mike Phelan last weekend. Now, I said I got to do better here because I asked Mike Phelan outright, hey, are we looking to go 4-3-3? And his response was, this is a direct quote, yeah, but we want to be flexible. We want to have more than one formation in the locker. And I said, all right, cool. Now, I guess that was news. That was news I potentially could have put out there. And seemingly the same day, someone literally did put out that sort of news. Now, I guess I have to be more aware of when speaking to people what's newsworthy and what isn't newsworthy. And to me, it wasn't necessarily newsworthy because I think probably like yourself, just been sitting here thinking United need to go to a 4-3-3. We seem quite defensively solid. We perhaps maybe lack a little bit of creativity and a touch of penetration at times. And I like this. So that's the formation I want to see United move. So when I was asking Mike, it wasn't necessarily like some sort of breaking news out of nowhere. It was kind of a validation of something that I've been thinking that United wanted to do for ages. Now, United are a defensive midfielder starter away from doing that, in my opinion. Now, United Twitter went kind of crazy. Rob Dawson put it out, said Solskjaer's looking to switch the team set up to a 4-3-3 this season, is what he said. He said Solskjaer's told the players in pre-season he wants to implement a more attacking 4-3-3 in a move that could spell the end for the midfield partnership of Scott McTominay and Fred. And I think like most United fans, you've been going, yeah, those two have been doing the job of one person, and if you put somebody else in that role, you can have a more advanced number 8 alongside them, and you can kind of push into being a little bit more unpredictable with our attacking. Now, obviously, I said we mentioned when we had Mike Phelan in for Late Night Vibe. I did discuss that with him. I did also talk about Saul Niguez with him. And I straight up asked him, I said, listen, Mike, I got a fetish for Saul Niguez. Are we in for him? And he said, oh, he's on the radar. I said, yeah, we know all about him. But he said, I think it'd be too expensive for us. So I was like, all right, cool. Because I'd be gutted if there was nothing in it. Like, you know, there's been a little bit of smoke, hasn't it? And actually this weekend, even more smoke sort of started coming out. And what was interesting, though, in the conversation, for me, I do like the 6, 8, 10 kind of designation of a midfield. Now, I'm beginning to see the FIFA generation, the 4-3-3 midfield is a 6 and 2 8s, or what I would call a 6 and 2 8s, or one defensive midfielder and 2 central midfielders, or possibly even 2 attacking midfielders. But it doesn't have to be identical. It doesn't have to be symmetrical. It doesn't have to be an inverted triangle. It doesn't have to be a straight up triangle. It can be a triangle pointing left or right. Manchester United's last great midfield 3, Carrick, Hargreaves and Scholes, weren't symmetrical. It was a 6, 8 and a 10. And they were completely different in their roles. Now, when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer took over at Manchester United, that first 6 months, he played a 6, 8 and a 10. It was Matic, Herrera and Paul Pogba. 3 different midfielders, 3 different roles, 3 different mindsets. Now, what was interesting chatting to Mike, he said he doesn't really view midfielders into those sort of more restrictive categories. He goes, he's a central midfielder. I don't even think he said central midfielder. I think he might have just said he's a midfielder. So he's looking for players that can kind of do it all. Now, maybe that's why we're looking at Camavinga. Perhaps that's why we're looking at Saul Niguez. Now, I've had a load of you people telling me, saying, both of those players can't play in the 6. For me, they can. And I absolutely think they can. I think they'd both be very good at it. Like, the same sort of people that probably would have said, Mascherano's a midfielder, he's not a centre-half. Did pretty well there, though, didn't he? I think for the sort of midfield that United are trying to move to, you don't necessarily need your Ndidi Kanté style destroyers. You want people who can play football. Saul, Camavinga, they can both do that for me. Now, you've also got Levitt and Garner. We saw those two yesterday, lining up together, probably more like a 4-2-3-1 than a 4-3-3 outright. But you did see those lining up together. Now, again, I'm not sure either of those is ready to be the single pivot number 6. It's such a vital position to get right that I really do think it probably has to be a big money signing. I don't necessarily see anyone that you can get on the cheap, and I don't necessarily see anyone that you can bring in from the academy that's just going to say, hey, listen, this is me. 4-3-3 suits United. What it does is, at the moment, I'll take you back to last season. I'll take you back even further than that. Pre-Bruno United. Fucking hell, how one-dimensional was that? Do you know what the two outlets we had? You had Paul Pogba and you had Marcus Rashford. Now, Paul Pogba was trying to get the ball to Marcus Rashford, and Marcus Rashford was trying to get the ball off Paul Pogba. And if you cut the supply line from Paul Pogba to Marcus Rashford, United didn't score. Then we got Bruno. Then we got loads of penalties. But now Bruno has become, while Pogba's been largely injured, Bruno's become the supply route. Now there's more attacking threats, and next season there'll be even more attacking threats. You've had Cavani in the mixer for when he's been playing. You've had Greenwood as an option. You've had Marcus Rashford, even though he was largely poor for the second half of the season, still put up quite respectable numbers. If you're able to field any sort of system where Paul Pogba can play as an 8 with freedom, you could maybe give Bruno... I mean, I see people say, oh, Bruno's a number 10. He can't play as an 8. He doesn't do the defensive role of an 8. He absolutely does, and you could still play him as a 10, I think. You can just rein him in just a touch and allow him to drive into that space. And if you allow Paul Pogba to maybe take one of the sides away from him, he can drive into that space. You just need someone with that real supreme level of balance, control, tenacity, and influence to sit in that number 6 area and start to dictate play from deep. For me, the number one issue of playing McTominay and Fred is that you've got two players who lack that incisive back-to-front pass that's really high quality. I think they're both adequate footballers, and I think they're both great options in a squad. And I actually think both of those, when you go to the Etihad or you go to Anfield, you want to switch it up a little bit. I understand the reason for starting both of those two players. I think they're really tenacious, hard-working, honest, good defensive options. But that's not where United have necessarily come unstuck. United typically perform better in those games against opposition where maybe we are on the back foot just a little bit. But since the transition, and I did ask Mike about that as well, was it an intentional thing to become more front foot attacking? And he said, yeah, we are. It's like we had a great conversation on camera, which you can go check out on 5. I mean, he also stayed for a bit of a drink, and we had a conversation on the back end of that as well where he was great. United have clearly become a front foot facing team. They're clearly a team that's looking to try and make advances with the ball forward. The problem when you're playing McTominay and Fred in those situations is that those two players combined are limiting your go forward ability because they haven't got the quality, they haven't got the risk taking and just the pure passing range to be able to put a ball in where you do need that higher level of footballer. You can probably get away with one of them, but they're not quite there to be the 6 either. And number 6 that comes in and allows us to do that transforms this team. The talk about Varane doesn't seem to be going away, and I think that's a hell of a sign of United because it allows us to play that bit higher up the pitch and not worry about getting done in behind. Huge. What Jadon Sancho is going to deliver on the right-hand side, I don't think a lot of you even know yet how good he's going to be for us. But you have to upgrade the engine. We've got new bumpers. We've got new wheels. We need an engine. We get a good engine, and I actually do think that I think we can compete. We've seen this United team under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer go on some seriously consistent runs of play. Breaking records in terms of straight wins, avoiding defeat on the road, all that sort of stuff. Now, with fans back in Old Trafford, we can turn our home form around from the shambles it was last season. Then we can go on a bit of a run. Can we put together the 21 wins that Manchester City did? It's a hell of an ask. No doubt about it. Hell of an ask. But why not? United can beat every single team in the league in a one-off game. Where we've struggled is consistently beating every single team in the league, back to back. More than any other manager. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, when we go into these big games, I believe that we're going to try and find a way to win these games. Whereas Louis, he was pretty hit and miss. Moyes, I think, just shit himself. And Jose seemed to not want to lose those games rather than to go out and win them. And he'd be like, yep, I'll take a 1-0 defeat at Anfield. Suits me, that. Whereas I think Solskjaer's going to try and win that game. Now, he might play on the counter, but I don't give a toss. If we won every game 1-0 and did it on the counter and won the league, would you give a toss? Would you really give a toss? I don't think you would. What United need to do is deliver some consistency. And I think that's perhaps why we're building what seems like a more capable squad. You know, maybe that means Jesse Lingard sticks around and plays 10 games. Maybe that means Tony Marshall only gets 10 games. Maybe Donny van de Beek plays 20 this season. The squad is getting there. From 2 years ago being one of the worst squads I've ever seen in a United shirt. Some really key, sensible buys. We've upgraded, retooled, and it sounds like we're in the mix for Trippier. We might have even upgraded as an attacking outlet at right back. If we've got that nailed as well, I'd be pretty confident going into this season. But we have to get it right with that number 6. I don't know who that's going to be. You all know I'd love Saul. And I'd half be terrified because I've bigged him up so much he's probably shit. It's just a player that I like watching play football. For some people, that's Neymar. For some, that was Ronaldinho. For me, it's a technical midfielder like Saul. I like Roy Keane for that. Not the same player. Roy Keane had that extra level of aggression and difference in him. But I like the way he keeps it simple like that. It's just a personal preference. Anyway, who do you think that number 6 is? Who is that guy? Who can we bring in where you go, do you know what? I mean, Kante aside, because I don't believe we're getting Kante, are we? So who could we realistically bring in? And do you think that would be enough if we brought that player in? Assuming we get Varane. Obviously, Sancho deal completes and maybe we bring in Trippier as well. Let me know in the comments. Cheers for tuning in. Listen, subscribe. And you can also come and check out, we've got a Reddit group where you can discuss all of this sort of stuff, which is a bit different to the YouTube comments. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and all the rest of that sort of stuff. Links for everything like that is down in the description below. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Laters.